Have you ever been there? It's 3 in the morning, you're staring at the ceiling, and your mind is just racing. You're running through this mental checklist of bills, debts, all the financial what-ifs. Well, if that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone.
This quote from a real person, it just says it all, doesn't it? This isn't about pulling an all-nighter for fun. It's about that quiet, relentless anxiety that money worries can bring when the rest of the world is asleep.
And the scale of this is just massive. A staggering 77% of adults in the US say they lose sleep because of their finances. And look, this isn't just a bad night here and there. For a lot of people, we're talking about a struggle that goes on for years.
So what's actually happening here? Well, according to sleep physician Dr. Alex Dimitriou, it's a really nasty, vicious cycle. The financial stress keeps you awake and alert, which, wrecks your sleep. And then, being exhausted makes it even harder to handle that stress the next day. Your thoughts just spiral. But what if it's even deeper than that? This is where we move beyond just talking about stress and get into a really fascinating area of psychology that looks at something called the scarcity mindset.
Let's just ask the big question that's at the heart of all this. What if the experience of not having enough money isn't just about the numbers in your bank account? What if it fundamentally changes the way your brain actually operates?
Okay, so what is scarcity? Researchers have a super simple but powerful definition for it. It's the feeling of having less than you feel you need. It's that gap between what you have and what you feel like you require just to get by. And that idea is the core of what's called scarcity theory. It basically says that this feeling of having less kicks off this powerful psychological feedback loop. It starts with financial strain, sure, but that strain puts a huge load on our brains that ends up shaping our attention, our decisions, pretty much everything.
So, how exactly does having a tight budget kind of hijack your brain? Well, research shows our minds adapt in 3 really specific ways.
So first up is something called tunnel vision. When you have an urgent problem, like you have to pay rent by the end of the week, your brain focuses on it with this incredible intensity. That problem fills your entire view, which is good for solving it, right? But the downside is you start neglecting everything outside of that tunnel, like planning for next month or thinking about the long term.
But here's what's so interesting. This mindset isn't all bad. In some ways, it can actually turn you into a more rational economic thinker. Because every single dollar matters, you get really, really good at what's called trade-off thinking. You're constantly weighing opportunity costs, thinking, okay, if I buy this, I absolutely cannot buy that. You're way less likely to be fooled by marketing tricks, too.
Okay, but there is a very heavy price to pay for that intense focus. And this is the third and probably the most critical effect. Researchers call it a tax on our mental bandwidth. Think about it. Constantly juggling bills, making those tough trade-offs, it uses up a ton of cognitive resources, leaving you with less brain power for everything else.
And this chart shows you it's not just a feeling, it's measurable. One landmark study found that just thinking about a major financial problem could temporarily lower a person's performance on cognitive tests by an amount equal to 13 IQ points. To put that in perspective, that's about the same mental drop you'd get from losing a full night's sleep. It's huge.
So now, let's put these pieces together. The tunnel vision and that taxed mental bandwidth. Because they don't just affect you in the moment. They can actually create this self-reinforcing cycle that is incredibly difficult to break out of.
And this is what's known as the scarcity trap. That tunnel vision might make you take out a high-interest payday loan just to solve today's problem without really thinking about the long-term pain. And at the same time, because your mental bandwidth is so taxed, you're more impatient. You're going to favor a small reward now over a bigger one later. And these behaviors, which totally make sense in the moment, can end up digging you into an even deeper financial hole.
So, the really crucial thing here is that if you understand this psychology, it gives you a whole new way to fight back. It becomes less about just managing the money and more about managing the mindset that scarcity creates. Sleep experts actually have some really practical strategies to reduce this brain tax. First, schedule worry time. No, seriously, set aside 30 minutes during the day to actually problem solve on paper. That helps contain the anxiety so it doesn't show up at 3 a.m. Second, just write it all down. The simple act of getting your worries out of your head and onto a list can free up so much mental space. And third, try to separate your problems from your thoughts. Recognize that an anxious thought is just that, a thought, not necessarily a fact. That can help break the cycle.
And all of this leaves us with one last really powerful question. If scarcity puts such a heavy tax on our most basic mental resources, our ability to focus, to plan ahead, to control our impulses, then what is the true hidden cost of poverty? Not just for individuals, but for society as a whole.